We good to go? Awesome. Well, hello everybody. My name is Stan, and I am going to be talking about code reviews. My talk is titled, It's Not Kindness, It's Diplomacy, How to Do Efficient Code Reviews. So even though I'm going to be talking about how diplomacy is applicable to code reviews and predominantly software engineers, I do believe that there are actually certain things that are also applicable to any other roles, so UX, management, marketing, so on and so forth. So first of all, I really hope that after you leave this talk, you will feel like this was an incredible waste of your time. Because if that's true, it means that I didn't teach you anything, and we're already doing everything awesomely, and we're perfectly great. So this talk was given by Elodie Raffali-Manana, who works in Adobe at DockerCon in Barcelona last year. She's been a software engineer for over 8 years, and she had some of these incredible insights that I'll try to kind of reproduce at this point. So I'll start with defining the problem, then I'll define what is diplomacy, and then hopefully we'll be able to combine these two and actually talk about how we can use diplomacy to do more efficient code reviews. So what's the problem? The problem is this. Most of the code reviews do not look like that. Not everybody's happy and jolly and everything's perfect. And more often, they are kind of a source of conflict. Things like, this doesn't make sense, this is just cosmetics, I don't understand what you're doing, change it for this. Words like that fly around, which then leads into kind of slowing down everything. We do not merge code. We do not merge good code, which is what we want to do for our customers. And people also like each other a bit less after this. But what is it that we are actually arguing about? Well, we do like to think sometimes that our IDEs are kind of these canvas that we paint on, and we are creating something brilliant and awesome. And kind of this is what we have, and this is what our team would like us to have. So our solution is already pretty great. Like, that's a pretty solid drawing of a raccoon. I mean, I don't think I could do that myself. But it needs some of these kind of final steps to make it that perfect drawing, which is on the right side. And how do we get from the point A to point B, preferably in the most efficient way and kind of without killing each other? Well, the answer is diplomacy. So what is diplomacy? Well, the dictionary definition of diplomacy is the conduct of international relations, which is like, what does that have to do with us at all? Like, we're not in politics, we are not trying to solve Brexit, thank God, and we are, we're writing software, right? Well, the author of this talk went to an art exhibition in Paris called The Art of Peace, and there she had these 3 epiphanies that make it applicable to us. So first of all, diplomacy is a technique. It's a social framework, which means it kind of influences how we talk to each other, purely as humans. Secondly, there is an algorithm which we can define, and because there is an algorithm, diplomacy can be implemented. So let's just look at that algorithm, I guess. Well, diplomacy is a social framework you use to achieve your goals without making yourself enemies. And without making yourself enemies is the important part. That's what makes it diplomacy, not manipulation. And it's actually pretty easy. So diplomacy always chooses what brings you closer to your goal without hurting other people. Once again, without hurting other people. We're trying to help each other, not hurt each other. And I guess the key number 1 is it's goal-driven. We need to be kind of working towards something. It's goal-driven. Diplomacy without a goal, it's not really diplomacy. It's just fluffy words in the air. And secondly, diplomacy is actionable. So based on a given situation, diplomacy will always return an action. Now, how do we get that action? Well, there are 2 rules for that. First one is understand first. The person who wrote that code and submitted that code review, they had certain intention behind it. Don't assume people are wrong straight away. Try to understand their story, because there is obviously a reason why they did that. And secondly, then based on your understanding, try to kind of find the most suitable action. And remember that diplomacy is very active, and it helps you towards that goal. So if we combine that together, based on the situation, we're trying to get an action, we have a set of all possible actions that are. One of them is merge, the other one is let's have a meeting, third one is screw it, let's go and bake cookies. First of all, you gotta start with understanding the situation, and then based on your understanding, you kind of try to walk towards the closest action. So if we kind of apply this to a real-life situation, in this kind of situation, we are being told to be kind. Which is fair enough, like we want to be kind to each other. But the problem with being kind is that being kind doesn't tell us what to do. It doesn't lead us towards anything. So it's fair enough, we can be nice to each other, but especially in an environment where we work, where we have goals and deadlines, being kind isn't the solution. Definitely not by itself. Being kind and being diplomatic at the same time, that's much better because we're kind of getting towards something. So use diplomacy, and let's take a look at the code review, and we're going to do this from a point of a code reviewer. So first of all, what is going to be our goal? Our goal is to merge good code, and preferably do it without making any enemies. And we are going to be asking for a change, and we're going to be asking for an explanation. Now, diplomacy deals with people, or human API, and we're most definitely not perfect. We have feelings, and it depends, like somebody might have a bad day and everything. So there are two things that we need to focus at. One of them is the attitude we go with, and the other one is just kind of words and the type of communication we use. So starting with the attitude, whoever submits a code review, their personal attitude is, I am done with this. Here, merge this, I'm done with this. And they're going to do everything they can to get this merged as possible. And the moment you provide any further inquiries about can we change something else, they're going to be like, nah, no, I just want to merge this. So you have to keep in mind, anytime you're dealing with somebody during a code review, that in their head, they're done. Never imply they didn't finish their job, because for them personally, it's finished. So respect the work that they've done already, and just kind of try to help them to get towards that one last step that gets you to the merged code. So that's the attitude part. The word part, split into 3 parts. First, lift the code, then keep it lifted, then keep it moving. What does that mean, lift the code? Remove the person and the code. Let's talk about the code. Let's talk about how we can improve the code. Let's ignore the human side of it, because once again, we're dealing with people, and people really don't like being told what to do, and more importantly, they don't like being kind of feeling undermined. So with the lifting the code, we're going to be focusing on what we can improve about the code, and not on something that that person has done. And we're going to use refactoring and implementation. So to start with, use positive comparatives. Use more, and then readable, maintainable, efficient, any of these words, which kind of imply that this is already good. In most cases, it's going to actually be good, and we just need to do this one more extra thing to make it better or make it perfect. And at the same time, use things like, I suggest to, what do you think? Is it possible? This could be like, oh, that's the typo that Johnny pointed out that I didn't notice. This could be like, but yeah, leave it up to them. As I said in the previous slide, people don't really like being told to do. So with refactoring, you could do things like, can this be extracted? This can be removed. It would be more readable named as something, instead of too much duplicated code and a smiley face, like passive-aggressive or useless. Like I get a comment for a code review like that. What am I supposed to do with that? This doesn't tell me what to do. This doesn't drive me anything. This just makes me want to roll the chair over and just bang somebody with a keyboard next to me, or or with the implementation, same thing. Could you try this pattern instead of use this pattern? This can be a service instead of your code is too specific. I suggest to replace by a function instead of this block is too big. It makes a difference how you say things to a human being. So don't point out what is bad. Instead of kind of suggest how to improve it. And in this kind of situation, the judgment matrix comes in. I don't know how many people are familiar with it. I forgot to include a link for it. But if you find yourself using words like good, bad, pretty, ugly, beautiful, horrendous, make sure you're describing the code and not the actions of the people, because once again, it will make the person feel like, they're being judged instead of the work that they've done. So once we've done that, or let's just kind of sum it up, put yourself on the side of a reviewee. Make them feel that you're in the same boat. You're not standing on the other side of a battlefield fighting each other. You're on the same kind of side of the battlefield, where on the other side there is that terrible bug or that feature that took really long that you need to do. So if you do things like using passive voice, so should be, needs to be, must be, or even use we instead of I and you, that does make them feel like you're on the same side as they are. And additionally, use polite form, because it's just nicer when we're polite. So in some examples, this should be checked instead of you should check this. We should check this instead of you should check this, or could you please check this instead of just ordering them to check this. So, just don't beat around the bush, ask for change, but remain neutral, but at the same time, kind of say what you want. So carrying on, now that we kind of got the reviewees' acceptance and they're quite happy for this particular code review, we want to make sure that we kind of maintain that relationship so they kind of invite us for the next code review. As like, this is the one code review that I ask you, and because of your attitude or the way you're talking to me, I'm never going to ask you to review anything for me again. So once you have their acceptance, just kind of make sure that they will invite you for the next review. And for that, I have 7 don'ts of code reviews. So very quickly, don't assume. Just referring back to the algorithm of diplomacy, understand first. So if you're not sure about it, ask it. Is this needed? Is there a reason? I might be missing something, instead of just saying this is wrong. Don't judge. So your code is bad, wrong, ugly. This needs to be changed like this. It's much better. And use sentences like, can a component handle it, instead of I don't like accessing DOM properties directly, and once again using a frowning smiley face. So as I say, back to the judgment matrix. Words like good, bad, pretty, ugly are sometimes necessary, but there is a huge difference between using those words to describe a person or an action of a person and then just kind of the code or the implementation of it. Don't point, so don't use you if possible. So is this the value that should be checked, instead of you're checking the wrong value? So going back to just using we or a passive voice. Don't give orders. Use this library instead of we can use this library instead. This is quite important, especially when it comes to code owners. People do get attached to their code, and if somebody just tells me, hey, use this on the thing that I've been working for a few months on my own, I'm probably not going to be very happy. You're the reviewer, not their boss. You are still on the same side as they are. Don't do their job, so just copy-pasting stuff from Stack Overflow and just saying, hey, this is code, and just kind of apply it. And then kind of the more obvious ones, don't be aggressive, like all caps and exclamation marks and, aubergine emojis. And lastly, kind of don't humiliate. So lastly, keep it moving. By the end of the day, we are still chased by deadlines, and we need to provide something. So while you do keep in mind that, we want to be goal-driven and actionable and use language where, we make people feel safe about providing, showing us their code changes, we do need to still keep the code moving. And in that case, the art of negotiation comes in. So when you're writing these comments, 2 things, I guess, make sure that it's either action-driven or argument-driven. So it seems not optimized is much less helpful than it can be optimized by using map entry. You're giving them an option. You're giving them an action of, yes, this is what I can do. Or, it should be renamed instead of it should be renamed because it's more readable. The second option does give you a reason. Hey, I am requesting this change from you because, I don't understand it. And then lastly, kind of persist politely. So I spent a few minutes trying to kind of dig through all the pull requests. And I don't know what that says about us, but it's actually quite hard to find positive ones where we kind of encourage each other and use any of these things. This is a particular one that does stand out. So in this one, you can see that, like, hey, these are the things that were really great. These are the things that, they are great. And then lastly, I've added some comments, but, only address them if it makes sense. So you're kind of leaving the option open for the person to make the decision. So I guess the conclusion is this is a lot of do's and don'ts, and use these words and those words. And we're human, so it would be quite awesome if we could just automate ourselves, like some kind of automating code review comment linter, maybe. So I actually do have one for you. Let's start with the human-resistant canceller. Use passive voice or use a we. That gets the people on your side. Give them an action. Remember, diplomacy as goal and action-driven. Use a positive comparative. That just, makes people feel like you're not judging them and you're giving them a reason. And lastly, give them an actual reason. I'm not just commenting on this for the sake of commenting. I do actually have a certain thing in mind. And that's everything for me.